Hi. I wanted to talk a little bit about love and about self-love and some of the different ways that we look at love and self-love and some potentially alternative ways to consider love and how we love ourselves. So I think the most common way that when we talk about self-love, is we personalize love and we talk about love like loving our body. We do regimens where we care maybe for our skin. We take time for ourselves. Maybe we go and do a body practice, whether that's gym or maybe that's yoga, swimming, where we are taking quality time and investing that into ourselves. Maybe that's getting our hair cut. Maybe that's doing our hair. Maybe that's putting on makeup. I think all of these things generally we might attribute to loving ourselves and caring for ourselves. Maybe more sleep for the body. Then we have different ways that we might love ourselves, where we are investing in the ways that we think. And maybe that might be going to a psychologist or a psychotherapist. Maybe that might be reading self-help books. Maybe that might be uh, reading fantasy and going into our imagination. Maybe that might be um, contemplative measures that help us to reflect. Maybe that's going uh, out and exploring the vastness through meditation within our mind, with our own inner within our own inner universe. Some of these ways are self-love here. And maybe self-love looks like going to church or finding groups that help to reflect back things that we're interested in, becoming an activist, finding passions. Maybe those are some of the ways that we self-love. The self-love that I want to draw attention to in this moment is something that Jesus has pointed to many times, which is loving another as ourselves. And what maybe that could also be meaning as we look to love more and move from a conditional way of loving, which in some vein of thought is there is a me and there is an other, and that love and to love an other, they must meet some qualifications or characteristics for me to give that love to that other, or to give or invest my attention to that thing. It must be worthy based on my qualifications of value, whether or not that thing, object, person is worth my investment of me, my energy, my time, my giving of it, my awareness. And when I look at that a little bit more deeply, the questions that arise are who are we? Who are we to evaluate or to value another worthy or not worthy of that love that we too have been given? And are we worthy of that? And who determines our worthiness to receive that awareness, that love, attention, care. And if we are wanting to do unto others that be done to us, and we make these evaluations of the rightness and wrongness of giving our love or not, would that not also be done to us? So, moving a little bit more deeply into love and self love, is this self that's loving? Who is this self that loves? What is this self? Is it this personhood? Is it this body? Within equanimity, within the sameness, all is assigned no value and no worth. Or, equally said, all is assigned high value and high worth, thus neutralizing the idea that there's a differentiation within the idea of better than or less than within equanimity. All have a function, but all functions are serving a purpose that have equal value. And within equal value, whether one has a function or not, is still equally given love and care, is equally loved regardless of function. We could equate that to within an organization, you have the CEO all the way to the employees working for the CEO. Maybe even the CEO has a board of trustees. Maybe the CEO is just the head of a larger organization, a conglomerate. But to simplify it, maybe this CEO has workers working for the CEO. Now, as the company expands, the CEO might only be able to do certain functions that take a more specific kind of awareness that is different from maybe what the employees need. For example, employees will need a restroom. Now, uh, who cleans the restroom? Do the employees clean the restroom? Which employees clean the restroom? Whose time is needed and for what? Yet there's a restroom that is, or restrooms that are needed to be cleaned. Is that something that the CEO does? If the CEO did that, would that make the CEO have less value? So we know that most places have either the employees, a certain employees going and checking the restroom area, or they hire, like maybe in the case of a school, a janitor who that's their specific job and function to do that. But the point is that there are jobs and functions that are needed. And what's the value or worth if there's nobody to clean the bathroom and the bathroom creates uh, smells, low hygienic environment, people getting sick? What value becomes a janitor then to come and clean something like that? When we start looking at functions and roles and serving a purpose, we start to see that one is not better than the other. They're all needed in less of a hierarchical, meaning more important. We start to see that there's an equality of need and a filling of roles and needs within that. And this doesn't create a system of good and bad, of right and wrong. It just is a system of seeing a need and filling it. And then there's a qualification of and filling that based on one's own inner skills and aptitudes that they have cultivated. Again, not better or worse than, not valued higher or lower than. This functioning is happening inside of us all of the time. This way of gazing or this way of seeing the world and our relationship to the world, this is happening all of the time. What the outer world teaches us often is there's the hierarchy, and whoever's at the top of the pyramid gets more than who's at the bottom. And we have all of the rationale and reasoning of why, because we're very trained to look at what jobs create more, what opportunities are more, and how much more you should get paid because of how much more you can produce in the world. So the production gives more value, how you can lead people to create more, to make more, so you have more product, and then that product sells, and then you get more. And this whole kind of environment of more and what can get me more creates a very sensationalized world where we can turn that more into physical, like more makeup or more gym, or then how our body looks, and brighter colors and more video, more show, to turn that in value into, if I do more or show more skin, then I have more value or more worth. And we externalize this as well. All of this more in shadow, and what we then tend to run from, is the idea of less. So if I'm not doing these things, then I'm not producing, then I have less value and worth. And I want you to think about that and consider that if we talked about this in terms of value, if we have a disease, and let's say cancer, and that cancer, you went to a doctor, the doctor says, take this pill and you'll be cured. And so you do that. The doctor gives you the pill, you take the pill, and the cancer is cured. It seems like that doctor for you with that cancer would have a high value. Is it the doctor or was it the pill? Maybe the doctor has a high value. Maybe the pharmaceutical company has an even higher value. Maybe the pharmaceutical starts to insert itself above the doctor because it knows that its pill can cure, and that doctor then gets money from the pharmaceuticals to give because it knows it's the miracle. Regardless of value and worth, we have placed a value on the doctor and on the medication given to have cured us. Let's take that same idea now and look at something that we don't often see, which is religion or spirituality. What if we took a inner burden that we have, a heaviness of our heart, and we go to a priest or we go to a spiritual person to help us alleviate the pain that we have of judgment, of lovelessness in our hearts. And we go and we have a conversation, and they are able to hear our pain, maybe even our suffering. They might be able to, maybe they pray over us, or maybe they give us some wise counsel that's able to actually somehow magically take the burden from us. We leave, we feel lighter, we feel more inspired, we feel more expansive. What's the value and worth of that? What to us with that burden in our heart would we give somebody who helps us reclaim that space that we have given up to the world and our own suffering? That spiritual person would seem to have a lot of value then. Yet it's often within the framework that we have in the world that we don't give a lot of value. Even the priests, many take vows uh, of poverty. They don't take money. And is that a devaluing of themselves? It could look like that on the outer world. But when we are all within our purpose and we're doing what it is that we do because we have a skill and an aptitude to do it, should we get paid for that? No, we're taking into consideration that all of our needs are provided for, because I could hear the argument, well, what about our living and all of these expenses that we have? And yes, of course. Let's imagine, though, for a moment that all of our basic needs are taken care of equally, that there isn't an actual need that's going unfulfilled. We're just talking about filling purpose, not about surviving, but about thriving within that which you are. and just gifting to the world that. Where does that come from? Whether that's from the CEO or whether that's from a doctor, or whether that's from the religious person, where does that self exist that's fulfilling the purpose? Each one of these roles is filling a purpose for someone. It's not only filling a purpose for the person who is in the role, but there's somebody on the other end, on the other side, that's receiving that. So we have somebody giving what they feel they're meant to be doing, and another receiving the gift of that. And in their receiving the gift of that, they are nourished. Their needs are met. This person's needs are met by giving the gift that they feel like they were meant to be giving, or that they know they're meant to giving. Where is that coming from? What within us determines that? This love that is ourselves, that is within each one of us, regardless of the outer profession that we choose to do, whether we feel that as our purpose or our calling or we don't. Much more deep before the outer is manifesting, is the inside of us that is in a choiceless awareness of what's possible in any given moment. And the free will that we have to choose in any given moment. Allows us to walk in life freely and be in love in any given moment with any choice. Because love is imbuing everything with itself equally. With each thing or person or energy having a perfect function or role, we can look at the difficulties that were given, energies that are difficult to relate with because of the way that we have been conditioned to think in the world in duality, in polarity, in contrast, of evaluating a better than or a less than as as a fact without taking into consideration a much larger reality that is inclusive to all, that's more like a synarchy of all things possible and created equal, and each thing just serving and filling its role and its purpose, not better than, not less than. And even if outwardly it doesn't seem like it is doing something to the eyes, it is still serving its role, its function, its purpose that isn't defined by the outer eyes of a human. Now, moving back into a deeper self-love and self-awareness is in this equanimity. All things created equal, all people created equal. Is within us our own evaluation or judgment of good, bad, right, wrong, and how we utilize that judgment to separate equality and not be able to see the good in what we perceive as bad. All things created equal. This is the juice here of where I wanted it to lead us, which is if I am struggling with, let's say, control or manipulation, if I'm struggling with those areas in my life, maybe I have somebody in the outer world who is controlling, maybe they're tyrannical, and I have a relationship with that in the outer world, and that's in my life. And I don't like it. I've created a no, that's bad, that's wrong, and I am pushing it away in some way, whether that is physically, emotionally, psychologically. What first I'm doing is I'm cutting myself off from this and the energy. And in some way, I'm creating a veil, which is an illusion that that thing is separate from me. Now remember, all things equal, all things created in love, as love. And some of those things in love are a lot more difficult, way more difficult to try and wrap our heads around, to try and find acceptance or a love for that. Which is why the work in the outer world is translating to the work for us in the inner world, which is unique to each one of us as to where we are showing up or where life is showing us some sense of self-separation. So the question, if the outer is showing me something I want to push away from myself, where is that within myself? Where is manipulation or control or maybe even tyrannical energy? Where is that? Where do I have that? And maybe it's really subtle because my experiences, as I become closer to myself in love, as love, all love reveals itself as love. It's like taking off a mask, that tyrannical king or queen that is existing out there somewhere. I'm doing the same in my own way with that energy, and I'm not able to see it. Maybe it's happened to me. Now, maybe I'm pushing it away because I have fear of it. And what I push away, I suppress. I have judged it as not good because maybe it's hurt me. Now, whether it's good or bad, what I'm pointing to is that it serves a purpose. It has a role, it has a function, it's a teacher for us. And it has love in it. And as a teacher, it is loving you in that moment. Now, Jesus might say, those who have eyes to see and ears to hear may be able to hear the call or see what is presenting and what's behind what's presenting. Here's the mask. Here's what it's really pointing to, which is love. Because that love of self is pointing us back to ourselves to stop repressing it, to stop judging it, to stop being afraid of it, and to find a place of equanimity where the thing that's like a splinter that's causing us pain and we might think, well, that's not causing me pain. I don't like it. I don't want it. It's not for me. And we notice then that all of that pushing away is creating this emotional turmoil within us that doesn't feel loving towards ourselves. And maybe in time, that infection of the splinter that hurts is now lashing out and hurting others. Is that, though, loving to ourselves? We talk about self-love. We talked about that in the beginning. Is having that baggage inside of us, is that loving to ourselves? So how do we find then a space of equanimity where all things can be? When we see that all things are just serving a purpose, usually for our own awakening. And for inclusion within the vastness that we are. The self that is this, the image, the projection of, the outward thing that I take care of, without taking into consideration the inner and unifying the outer and the inner, is going to keep me in some facet of separation and withholding from myself. That at some point will be longing for reconciliation, longing to come back to itself. Which is why when we don't listen to what our lessons are, they come back more forcefully, because that love that's within the lessons, within, using the same example, the tyrant, maybe didn't start out as tyrannical. Maybe it started out as a small pain that we started noticing, and maybe that which we were attracting wasn't and didn't feel like a tyrant, But that control in time that we weren't looking, and how we're trying to control our outer environment, control people, and control ourselves, and restrict and orient, and it's only this way but not this way. All of these different mechanisms of control that are on the outer, without the inner question of what or why am I so controlling? What am I afraid of? What if I let go of this control? What would happen? Or lots more questions, contemplations for self-understanding. All of this self-awareness is love. And the questions help to bridge or form an energy between one thing and another to help bring understanding back to it. There is a place, and it is possible, to look at something and see the love within it, something that's very hard and challenging. Something like manipulation. When we can be free of manipulation and we can see it, we can love it and see that it's served a purpose, it served a function, it exists. And that we can also love it. We stop pushing it away. We stop creating division. We stop making it wrong for having an existence. All that exists has a purpose, a divine one, in equanimity. And it's the love within ourselves that sees the love within all, inviting it all back home. This is a hero's journey. But this home in equanimity, we see that nothing ever left. It was all already there before we placed it somewhere else. So that is what we are reconciling, that hierarchical structure of better than, worse than, and judging and evaluating lesser, greater, in a sense of defining it and reducing it to an object. And now we're releasing it back into the vastness in which it's just doing what it does. And being its best version of itself, whatever that is, because it's already perfect. And the one that sees it only sees its perfection, its place, its perfection in the picture as itself. So all energies, all classifications are reduced from love. which is why love is the greatest power. Because love is in essence within all as itself, as it is, as it always was, as it never left. It's just this outer version stopped being able to see itself within everything in equanimity. Self-love, seeing ourselves in another, the essence of ourselves as love, as perfection, as exactly the perfect thing arising in each moment. Demonstrating to us exactly what we need to see and know and love. This is the unconditional aspect of God. Thank you for being with me.